Today my talk is going to be the multi-scale simulation of CO2 electro-reduction. So I'm Tao Cheng from Soochow University. This is our university. We actually is quite big. We have 26 department coverage almost all the STEM, and we have 27,000 undergraduate students, 10,000 master students, and about 2,000 PhD students. Our school is, quite international. So we also have a lot of international students from different countries. This is my institute. We call this Institute of Functional and Soft Materials. We usually call this FUNCSOM. And this is our leader teams. Our institute is quite young. It starts 2008, so it's only 13 years old, but we already make significant impact on field, especially in the material science. So we have four major directions, and my group is working on this one, is the material simulation and the material genome. Today, I want to give you briefly two topics. One is a short review of the CO2 reduction mechanism from theory, and second one is our recent progress to use this multi-scale simulations to study the CO2 electrocatalysis on polymer functionalized copper surface. We know that electrochemistry is the center for the sustainable energy. In this field, computational simulations can provide a lot of important informations. But to have accurate predictions, we need our methods should be reliable. In our group, we work on three directions to make the simulations more accurate. First one is that this electron transfer. So we develop a method based on this grand canonical electron chemical potential ensemble. So in this case, we can simulate the voltage in the electrochemical reaction. So this is what is the difference between the electrochemical reaction and the normal chemical reaction. Because in the electrochemistry, we always have this applied voltage. The second part is that we develop models that can simulate the nano particles. So we know that for the catalysis, nanoparticles usually have much better performance than the bulk. But the problem is that people don't know the structure and people don't know what's the exact active size. So we develop methods based on this reactive force field so that we can do simulations directly at the exactly the same scale as the experiment. The last one is also very important. It's the advanced sampling methods. So because our simulation is quite expensive, so usually we can only achieve a very short simulation time. So this is not enough to simulate the chemical reactions. We know that sometimes chemical reactions may occur maybe in seconds, minutes, or even days. But in the regular simulations, we can only do simulations for picoseconds. So this means that we have 10 orders or more to to bridge this gap, we develop some methods that can advance the simulation time in our simulation, so that we can directly simulate the chemical reactions directly. So with all this technique, we can now develop we call this virtual electro half cell. So the concept here is very like the one used experimentally. So we have this electrode, we have this electrolyte, and then the electrochemical reactions is occurred at the interface. So to make it possible to simulate the electrochemical reaction, the center is the center technique here is that we can regulate the work function to the applied voltage. And with all this technique, we can now see chemical reactions. I show here one case is that you can have this stable CO2 activated by this copper surface to have chemically solved CO2 on the copper surface. So, so the question is, I mean, ask ourselves or people ask us is that how accurate your simulation it is. So here we provide evidence here. So there is one well-known experimental result is that the hydrogen binding energy have the pH dependence. So the points shown in this figure is the experimental results. We can clearly see the trend that the hydrogen binding energy is changed with the pH. So basically, when you have higher pH, the hydrogen binding energy is actually stronger. So if you use this regular QM methods, you cannot capture this one. What you can end up with is just a constant binding energy. But use the technique we discussed before, the simulation methods we developed. Now we can see that the black one can well capture the trend, the experimental results quantitatively and quantitatively. So this work, is has been highlighted by the JACS spotlights. So then, if we look into the microstructures, we can explain the hydrogen binding energy dependence on the pH from the interface structure. So basically, what we show here is that we compare the structure at low pH, the 0.02, and at the high pH case is 12.8. So we can see that if we look at very close at the interface, you can see it's actually different. So basically, if at this high pH, the distance between the first layer of water to the electrode is a little bit further than the high pH case. So in this case, it means that the water have weaker interaction with the metal part, which in turn have stronger interaction with hydrogen. So now we can, not only capture the trend, but also well explain the hydrogen binding energy trend on the pH by looking at the microstructures. So what we propose here is that when the pH is higher, the surface is actually more hydrophobic. In that case, the hydrogen is binding stronger. So this is one strong evidence showing that our methods is quite accurate and it can, apply to solve problems in electrochemical reactions. And then we can do a case we really want to do is the CO2 reduction mechanism. So for the CO2 reduction, the problem is that the current catalysis have low activity and the selectivity is also low. So to improve the performance of the catalysis, we need to well understand the reaction mechanism. So experimentally is extremely difficult because we know that so the reactive intermediates is really small in the atomic level. So this is one challenge. Another challenge is that the reactive intermediates usually very short-lived. But this is not the problem for our simulation. Especially when we develop this technique, that we can have this accurate predictions. So here I show the cases. So the common product from CO2 reduction, the CO formation, the CH4 formation, C2H4 formation, the formate formation. And we systematically investigate and proposed the reaction mechanism from our virtual half-cell simulation. And then we can distinguish an important reactive intermediate from this pathway. So now we can give suggestions to experiment to improve the catalysis to have better performance. So of course, this is not the only reaction mechanism. So people, not our group, it's actually a lot of theoretical group working on this reaction mechanism study. And everyone, because we don't have we sometimes use different methods and sometimes with different approximations. So people end up with different reaction mechanism. So here I show a paper, it's the chemical review paper that summarizes all this possible reaction pathway for the CO2 reduction proposed purposely. And our group contribute this purple path. So then the question is which mechanism is more reliable? So from our point of view, definitely our methods should be more reliable because in principle, our methods is more advanced. So this will guarantee a more accurate predictions. This is one. The second one is that we work on this field many years. We do several papers in the same methods, in the same level of approximations to predict the different products. So after about 6 years, we finish all the predictions for the C1, C2 product. So this is the papers published related to the reaction mechanism study. But this is not enough because in principle, our methods should be more accurate, but we need more solid evidence. So here I show that we can also do these predictions for the spectrosity. So in this case, the spectrosity cannot directly compare with experiment because experimentally it's even impossible to see the reactive intermediate, but it's possible to have this spectrosity. So here I show that when you compare with the experimental results and with the simulation results, the black one, we can see that we can distinguish the CCOH as an important reactive intermediate in our reaction pathway. So this is a strong evidence showing that our prediction is reliable. So another thing I want to draw your attention is that if you use this traditional gas phase simulations, you end up with this blue line. Then if you compare with the blue one and the black one from our simulation, you can see that it's very different. And none of this one can explain the experimental result. So this means that if you want accurate predictions, you need to develop methods that should be accurate. So now because we fully understand the reaction mechanism, what we are trying to do now is trying to improve the performance. So usually, in most of the case, the best catalysis is always nanoparticles. So as we discussed before, so the challenge to simulate a nanoparticle is that we don't know the structure. So in our simulation, we develop methods that can computationally synthesize copper nanoparticle. So in the end, so this is a movie showing that how we simulate the growth of the nanoparticle. So this is exactly the same as the CBD experiment. Eventually, we end up with a structure like this, as this is our simulation structure. And if we zoom in and simulate the TEM images, we can see that. So this one is look very like the experimental one. And so if we look more details, for example, people all agree that the green boundaries are very important for the activity. So we analyze the green boundary density from the simulation and the experiment. We can see that it's quite close. So this means that using this computational synthesis methods, we can generate a nanoparticle structure that is very similar as the experimental result. And this gives us a very good starting point to simulate the nanoparticle. So, but then the problem is that the nanoparticle is too big. We cannot use this, the technology we developed just now to investigate all this size because that is too expensive. So now we develop a machine learning model. So in this case, we just do a small amount of QM calculations. I mean, small amount of expensive simulations, and then we can use that as an input to build a model. So the machine learning model is much more efficient than this expensive QM calculations. This means that we can predict the performance of all the sets in no time, in much affordable computational cost than this expensive calculations. So here we show the cases that we actually can distinguish some really hot sites that can have high activities in these nanoparticles. And so then we can also do predictions. We can computationally screen materials that can propose for the experiment people to synthesize. So here we show a case is the gold nanoparticle. So gold is pretty good to reduce CO2 to CO, but the performance is not perfect. What we are trying to do is that we're thinking if it is possible to increase the performance of gold. So the idea is that we can dope the second metal into gold. So then we can do this computational prediction to see which material give us better performance than gold. So here we show that if you dope the iron into copper, I mean a small amount of iron into the gold, it should have better performance. The question is, if this is true, then we find we very lucky to find an experimental collaborator, and they help us to synthesize this nanoparticle. So and we do this performance benchmark. So we can see that the gold iron nanoparticle have 2 orders increase in this activity. So this means that the new catalysis is 100 times better than the pure gold. So another good news is that we know that gold is much more expensive than iron. So when you dope iron, you actually also decrease the cost, but you also end up with significant better performance. That's really nice. So this is the first topic. So we show you how we investigated the reaction mechanism and used the mechanism we obtained from the simulation to design materials. And finally, we make it possible for the experimental success. The second topic I want to talk is what we are working recently. So by now, people work a lot on this copper metal part, and they already improve the performance a lot. But by now, it looks like it's reached a limitation. It's really hard to increase the performance more. So recently, people have some new ideas that okay, instead of just changing the metal, how about we functionalize the copper the metal surface? So now you just open a new field. So there is a lot of possibilities. And now you can see that you can either use molecular or this MOF or polymer on this metal surface. So what we are interested about is the polymer. So there is one paper published last year. So they show that if you have the small polymer on this copper surface, they can significantly increase the performance. And so we are very lucky to have an experimental collaborator from Grab's group in Caltech, and Dr. Jian Chun synthesized 16 polymers by finely tuning the functional groups. So this is really systematic. And if you compare the performance, you can see that so it's actually very different. So please note that the metal is the same. All the metal is copper. The only difference is the polymer. So we can see that for the number 1 case, you almost have no CO2 reduction. There is only 2. But if you go through the case 8, you can have more than 80% of C2 product. So that means that the polymer really play an important role here. So what we are trying to understand is that what happens when you have this polymer on the metal surface. So in this case, the virtual cell itself is not enough because it's too small. We need to develop some new technique. So in this case, we developed this new reactive fossil that can both have this accurate consideration of applied voltage, but also affordable to simulate a large system like this one. So we then simulated the interface, and we are trying to correlate the structure to the performance. But we have to say that after many tries, we all failed. So we cannot find a very good descriptor. But finally, we found that if we used the number of CO2 absorption on the surface, we can actually have very good correlation. So here, the x-axis is the number of CO2 on the surface, and the y-axis is the performance. So we can see it almost perfect linear trend here. So this means that the CO2 absorption is really relevant for the performance. So just to take away information here, we first develop a new reactive fossil to have this applied voltage include. And the multi-scale simulations, we also carry out the multi-scale simulations to investigate different polymers on the electrode interface. And we found that so the CO2 absorption is really important. And we think the surface function normalization is really a new opportunity to improve the CO2 reduction performance. So I want to thank my collaborators, Professor Goddard and Professor Grabs from Caltech, and Dr. Jianchun from Caltech, and the students involved in this group. So this is my talk. And last I want to introduce a new journal here. So it called the Smart Material. And so this is a really new journal. We don't have impact factor now, but the first impact factor we expecting is 10. So for people working on different areas, we suggest you to consider our journal. Yeah. So last one is that any suggestions, comments?